There are moments that fracture time. Moments when someone walks into your life, and suddenly, nothing looks the same. You weren't searching for anything, at least not consciously. Yet, something about this person, something in their eyes, in their presence, felt like a door creaking open inside you. A door you didn't know existed until that instant. It wasn't fireworks, not in the cinematic sense. It was quieter than that. It was recognition, like a soul remembering another. Like the first deep breath after holding it for far too long. Maybe it was a brief encounter. Maybe it turned your world upside down. Or maybe it's someone still in your life now, but the feeling was unmistakable. I've known you before, and just like that, the questions began to bloom inside you. Why this person? Why now? Why does their presence feel so significant, so inevitable? What is this pull that defies logic, that resists explanation? Is this love, or something else? These are not casual questions. They rise from deep within the psyche, from the places we rarely touch. And the truth is, most of us have no map for navigating this kind of connection. We call it destiny. We call it fate. We call it soulmates. But often, what we're really naming is intensity. The kind that floods the nervous system. The kind that feels like truth, because it's overwhelming. But does intensity always mean something is real? This is where many of us get lost. We equate depth with drama. We believe that if someone stirs us so profoundly, they must be the one, and yet the very thing that draws us in might not be love. It might be a mirror, a reflection of something unresolved within us. A missing piece of ourselves we've projected onto another face. In this video, we're going to explore this distinction, not from the lens of fantasy, but from a place of radical self-honesty. Because if you've ever met someone who cracked something open in you, someone who felt like both a balm and a storm, then you already know how high the stakes are. This isn't just about them, it's about what they awaken in you, and more importantly, whether what you feel is truly about them, or whether it's a call to meet a part of yourself you've long abandoned. Because not every soul connection is meant to last forever. Some are meant to ignite you, to rupture what's false, to initiate a deeper journey inward. This is where we begin, with the mystery of that meeting, with the ache of not knowing what it meant, or why it meant so much, and with the possibility that what feels destined is actually designed to reveal you to yourself. Stay with me. The answers won't always be easy, but they just might set you free. We often believe that love is about finding someone who completes us, someone who fills the spaces where we feel small, where we ache, where we long to be seen. And when we meet someone who makes us feel alive, who reflects back an image of beauty, brilliance, or safety, it's easy to believe this must be it. But what if that feeling isn't about the other person at all? What if, in those early moments of enchantment, we're not actually falling in love with them, but with a reflection of our unmet needs, of our unlived qualities, of the self we haven't yet dared to become? This is what Carl Jung called projection, the unconscious act of placing disowned aspects of ourselves, our desires, our pain, our potential, onto another person. The other becomes a canvas, and we paint on them everything we've hidden from ourselves. She becomes the nurturing figure you never had growing up. He becomes the protector you always wished would come. They become the ideal, funny, wise, grounded, everything you wish you were or had access to. And here's the hard truth. It feels real. The emotions are real. The intensity is real. The sense of familiarity is real. But the story you're telling yourself, that might not be. You don't see the person, you see the projection. Think of it like this. You're standing in front of a mirror and you believe you're looking out a window. You think you're seeing something external, someone separate, but what you're really seeing is you refracted through the lens of longing, through the shadows of your past. That's why these kinds of connections feel so magnetic. They activate something ancient in us. They stir the places where we've been invisible, unloved, unchosen. Suddenly, in their presence, we feel lit up. We feel seen. But it's often not the person doing the seeing. It's our fantasy doing the projecting. There are signs, subtle at first, then louder. You idealize them to the point where their flaws disappear. Or you sense something off, but dismiss it, because acknowledging it would crack the illusion. You feel an almost obsessive need to be close to them, not because of who they are, but because of what they represent. And then, inevitably, reality intrudes. They do something human, something ordinary. They disappoint. They contradict the script you've written for them in your mind. And suddenly, the pedestal collapses. You feel betrayed, but they didn't betray you. What broke was the image you constructed. That image wasn't love, it was need. This is where most relationships falter, not because people are incompatible, but because the fantasy dissolves and what's left doesn't match the intensity of the projection. The rush fades, and what remains is two real people who were never fully seen by each other in the first place. So why do we do this? Why do we fall so easily into the trap of projection? Because it's easier to see ourselves in someone else than to turn inward. It's safer to love through illusion than to confront the truth of our own wounds. Projection is the mind's attempt to resolve the past in the present. If I can finally be loved by someone like them, I will heal the place where I once felt unlovable. But that healing doesn't work when it depends on another person fulfilling a role. It only works when we recognize the role we've assigned and begin to re-own what we projected. Consider this: the person you're obsessed with for their emotional depth. Are they expressing something you've suppressed? The one who feels like your perfect opposite, are they carrying a trait you abandoned in yourself long ago? When we reclaim our projections, we don't necessarily lose the relationship. In fact, we open the door to a more honest one where love is no longer a vehicle for fantasy, but a practice of seeing and being seen as we truly are. This isn't easy. It asks for radical self-responsibility. It means saying, "What I feel might not be about you." It means pausing before acting on longing and asking, is this need coming from my present or from a wound buried in my past? There's no shame in projection. It's human. It's universal. We all carry internal stories shaped by early experiences, culture, trauma. These stories don't vanish just because we fall in love. In fact, love brings them to the surface. And that's the opportunity. Because if we stay asleep to our projections, we keep repeating the same patterns, falling for different faces with the same emotional blueprint, caught in a loop of intensity, disappointment, and confusion. But if we become conscious of our inner landscape, something profound happens. We start to see people more clearly. We stop demanding that they fix what was broken long before they arrived. We begin to love from choice, not compulsion. We begin to connect from wholeness, not hunger. And maybe that's where real intimacy begins, not when someone completes you, but when they reflect back the truth you've finally learned to own. The illusion of love isn't false because the feelings are fake. It's false because the source of those feelings is misunderstood. Love rooted in projection asks the other to carry our soul for us. Love rooted in presence says, "I found my soul, and I see yours too." In the next section, We'll look more deeply at the emotional signals that distinguish authentic connection from projection. Because the body knows, and learning to listen to its signals is one of the most powerful ways to recognize when what we're feeling is love, or simply the longing to be healed. It's one of the most common confusions in love, mistaking emotional intensity for emotional truth. You meet someone, and the spark is undeniable. Your heart races. You can't eat, can't sleep. They're in your thoughts constantly, as if your nervous system has been hijacked. Conversations feel electric. Every glance carries a hidden weight, and you think, this has to be real. But here's the paradox. What feels overwhelming doesn't always mean it's healthy, and what shakes you to your core isn't always love. Sometimes it's activation. Sometimes it's trauma. Sometimes the intensity is simply your body remembering something you've never resolved. Because love, real love, doesn't destabilize you. It grounds you. Let's look at the difference. When you're in a projected relationship, driven by unconscious need, the emotional landscape feels like a roller coaster. High highs, crushing lows. Every interaction carries emotional consequences. If they text, you're flying. If they pull away, you crash. Your worth feels tethered to their attention. You're not just in love, you're in withdrawal when they're gone. This is not a failure on your part. It's your nervous system responding to perceived threat or reward. You've wired yourself, consciously or not, to associate their presence with safety, with significance, with self-worth, which means their absence feels like danger. Intensity, in this context, becomes addictive. It mimics aliveness, but at the cost of peace. Contrast this with authentic love. It may not sweep you off your feet in the same cinematic way. It may begin quietly, but it carries something deeper, a sense of expansion, not contraction. When you're with this person, your body relaxes, your breath deepens. You don't feel the need to perform, to chase, to prove. You feel more yourself. There's a calmness in the connection, a sense of being seen, not idolized, not rescued, but witnessed in your full complexity. You're not afraid to show your uncertainty, your rawness, your truth, and neither are they. This doesn't mean the relationship is without passion, but the passion isn't fueled by anxiety or fantasy. It's rooted in presence, in curiosity, in shared growth. It's not a fire that burns everything down. It's a warmth that keeps growing slowly and sustainably. So how do you tell the difference between emotional intensity and authentic connection? The body tells you first. When you think about the person, notice what happens. Do you feel tension in your stomach, a tightness in your chest, shallow breath? These are often signs of activation, your nervous system in a hyper-alert state. You might be interpreting these sensations as butterflies, when in fact, they may signal a deeper anxiety. In contrast, authentic love tends to soften you. There's still excitement, yes, but it feels like coming home, not entering battle. The body is your compass here, and it rarely lies. Also notice the space you have in the relationship. Are you able to be alone without panic? Can you pursue your passions, your friendships, your solitude, without fearing that distance will break the bond? If not, you may be caught in a dynamic of emotional dependence, where proximity equals safety and separation equals threat. Authentic love honors individuality. It allows space because the bond doesn't rely on control. It's rooted in mutual respect. It doesn't demand constant closeness to feel secure. It thrives in both connection and spaciousness. And consider the patterns. Does this relationship echo past ones, even if the people are different? Are you replaying old dynamics under new disguises? The faces may change, But if you keep finding yourself in similar cycles, emotional chaos, extreme longing, fear of abandonment, there's a strong chance that what you're experiencing isn't new love. It's an old wound, resurfacing in new form. This is not about blaming yourself. It's about recognizing the script you've been unconsciously acting out and choosing to rewrite it. Intensity isn't the enemy, but it's a messenger. It tells you where you're still looking for someone to make you whole. It reveals where love has been confused with survival, and that awareness is a doorway to transformation. When we learn to pause in the face of intensity, to breathe instead of chase, to witness instead of attach, we start to choose differently. We stop asking another to rescue us from ourselves. We begin to cultivate the kind of relationship that doesn't consume us, but awakens us. Real love might not come with fireworks, but it will feel like alignment, like exhale, like truth. And more than anything, it will give you space to grow, not because you need to be fixed, but because it sees who you already are, and still says, I'm here. In the next section, we'll explore what happens when timing and connection seem too perfect to be random, when life arranges meetings so precise, so meaningful, they seem orchestrated by something beyond logic. This is where we dive into synchronicity and the mystery behind why some people appear in our lives when they do. Sometimes, someone enters your life at the exact moment you're questioning everything. You weren't expecting them. You weren't ready. Not in the traditional sense, but something about the timing feels precise. As if the universe had conspired to place this person in your path, with the kind of elegance that logic can't explain. Maybe you were in a cafe, lost in thought, wondering how to move forward, and they appeared. Or perhaps a friend mentioned their name the same day you dreamt about someone with the same face. A book recommendation, a song lyric, a chance encounter. The moment seemed too aligned, too tailored, to be dismissed as coincidence. This is the realm of synchronicity, those seemingly random events that feel loaded with personal meaning. The word, coined by Carl Jung, points to a deeper truth, that life doesn't just unfold through cause and effect. It moves in rhythms, it speaks in symbols, and sometimes it delivers people to us not to complete a storyline, but to awaken one. When a connection feels fated, it isn't always because the person is meant to stay. It's often because they're meant to activate something. These encounters don't just stir emotion, they stir memory. Not literal memory, but soul memory. A feeling of having been here before, of knowing someone before the first word is spoken. It's as if time collapses, as if everything that led to this moment suddenly makes sense. Not in a logical way, but in a way that resonates deeply in the body. And yet, here's what's important to understand. Just because a connection feels destined, doesn't mean it's meant to last forever. This is one of the hardest truths to accept. We think if the meeting was so powerful, so aligned, so inexplicable, then it must be for life. We want the meaning to translate into permanence, but the purpose of these fated connections isn't always to stay. Often they're here to shake us awake, to initiate a cycle, to illuminate what we couldn't see before, to bring to the surface something we've buried. Their purpose may be transformation, not possession. And when we try to hold on to a connection that was designed to shift us, we turn the sacred into struggle. We resist the natural rhythm of beginnings and endings. We turn a teacher into a prisoner of our expectations. But when we allow these connections to move through us, to open us, change us, and move on if they must, we stay in integrity with their original gift, clarity. So how do we know whether a connection is meant to evolve or dissolve? We don't always know. And that's the point. Synchronicity doesn't guarantee forever. It invites us to pay attention, to be present with what's unfolding without needing to force its future. The best way to understand these connections is by looking at what they evoke in you. Does the relationship awaken parts of you that had been dormant? Does it challenge your identity, expand your emotional range, make you question the life you thought you wanted? If the answer is yes, then the meeting has already served a profound purpose. The question isn't how do I keep this person? The real question is what part of me is now awake because of them. When we approach love through this lens, everything changes. We no longer chase permanence as proof of meaning. We begin to trust the flow of life more than our fear of loss. And we start to recognize that some people are not meant to build a future with us. They're meant to help us reimagine what a future could be. You'll know you've had a fated connection not just because of how it felt in the beginning, but because of how deeply it rearranged you, because of what it left behind in your understanding of love, truth, and self. And if that person leaves, they don't disappear. Their imprint remains, not as a ghost of what could have been, but as a catalyst of what you're becoming. So when you feel the pull of synchronicity, honor it. Listen to what it stirs in you. Let the mystery breathe. You don't need to rush to label it or define its outcome. Some connections are written in stars not to be kept, but to guide, to realign you with a part of your soul you forgot how to hear. In the next part, we'll explore what happens when the connection doesn't just illuminate, but confronts. When the relationship becomes a mirror, and what it reflects back is not beauty or romance, but shadow, those disowned parts of ourselves we never meant to see. This is where love deepens or unravels, and where the work truly begins. Love can be a mirror, but not the kind that flatters, the kind that reveals. At first, a connection may feel like light, expansive, radiant, affirming. But if it is truly meaningful, if it touches the deeper layers of your being, then sooner or later, it will begin to reflect what you've hidden, what you've repressed, what you never meant for anyone to see. This is the work of the shadow. The shadow is not evil. It is not your flaw. It is not your wound alone. It is simply everything you have disowned. Everything that didn't fit the image you learned to present to the world. The anger you suppressed to be likable. The vulnerability you buried to feel strong. The desires you silenced to belong. And while you may have successfully kept those parts out of sight, relationships, especially the close, emotionally charged ones, have a way of bringing them right to the surface. Why? Because intimacy presses on our edges. It strips away our performances. And eventually, it places us in front of someone who sees past our carefully curated masks. Not always consciously, but energetically. You may find yourself drawn to someone who expresses the very qualities you've denied in yourself. If you've spent your life being rational and contained, you might be magnetized by someone wild and emotional. If you've been quiet and accommodating, you might be fascinated, maybe even intimidated by someone unapologetically assertive. And at first, it feels like balance, like wholeness. You complete each other until it doesn't. Because the same quality that once mesmerized you starts to irritate you. What you admired begins to threaten your sense of control, your identity. Their freedom now feels like chaos. Their emotional honesty begins to feel overwhelming, and you wonder what changed. The truth is, nothing changed. What shifted was your proximity to your own shadow. You are no longer observing it from a distance. You are dancing with it. And the discomfort isn't about them, it's about what they activate in you. This is where most relationships begin to unravel, not because of incompatibility, but because of avoidance. it's easier to blame the other, to say they're too much, too different, too unstable. But what if the conflict is not a problem to escape, but a message to receive? What if their presence is an invitation, not to fix them but to face yourself? Relationships are sacred spaces, not because they promise peace, but because they offer truth. And truth, especially the kind that challenges us, is the only thing that has the power to heal us at the root. So, how do you recognize when a relationship is triggering your shadow? You'll know when your reactions are disproportionate, when you find yourself overreacting to small things, when a tone of voice, a delay in response, a disagreement sends you spiraling, not because of what happened, but because of what it touched in your history. You'll know when you start to split, idealizing and demonizing the same person in a single breath, when your perception of them swings wildly depending on how safe or unsafe you feel internally. You'll know when the conflict feels familiar, almost scripted, when you're not just arguing with them, but with every person who ever made you feel small, unworthy, invisible. This is the moment of choice. You can continue the cycle, blame, withdraw, repeat. Or you can pause and ask, what part of me is being exposed right now? What emotion is this person reflecting that I haven't owned in myself? Maybe they're not making you feel abandoned. Maybe they're showing you where you've abandoned your own emotional needs. Maybe they're not too controlling. Maybe they're confronting your fear of asserting boundaries. This doesn't mean staying in harmful situations or tolerating disrespect. Shadow work is not about spiritualizing abuse. It's about recognizing that discomfort is not always danger. It is sometimes a teacher in disguise. True intimacy begins the moment we stop trying to be perfect and start being present with everything we are, light and dark, known and hidden. The gift of shadow work in relationship is integration. The more we own the parts of us we once rejected, the less we need others to carry them for us. The less we demand that others be the bad guy or the rescuer. The more we can meet others as they are, because we finally met ourselves. And paradoxically, when both people in a relationship are willing to do this work, something extraordinary happens. The relationship stops being a battlefield and becomes a container, a space where both can evolve without having to shrink, perform, or pretend. A space where triggers are not weapons, but windows. A space where love becomes not the absence of conflict, but the presence of conscious response. Of course, this takes courage. It takes patience. It takes the willingness to sit with yourself in the mirror that the other holds up. But the reward is profound. Emotional liberation, and a love that doesn't collapse under the weight of illusion, but expands under the weight of truth. In the next section, we'll explore what happens when love becomes less about longing and more about presence. When we stop seeking from lack and begin relating from fullness. When the shift from emotional dependence to inner wholeness becomes the foundation for authentic love. There is a kind of love that clings and another that expands. At first, they can look the same. Both come with intensity, longing, the desire to be close, but underneath, they are built on very different foundations. One arises from emptiness, the other from presence. Dependency-based love says, without you, I am not enough. It makes the other person responsible for our well-being, our self-worth, even our identity. It ties our value to how they respond to us, how often they affirm us, how much space they give or don't give. It whispers, if they leave, I'll fall apart. This kind of love often begins subtly. It may even wear the mask of devotion, but soon it becomes consuming. Every silence feels like rejection. Every boundary feels like abandonment. Your mood rises and falls with their attention. You live in anticipation of a message, a glance, a gesture of reassurance. And when that attention is withheld, your world narrows. You lose contact with yourself. You become a shape molded by another's presence or absence. Their love doesn't feel like something you receive. It feels like something you must keep earning. This isn't love. This is survival. It's the echo of unmet needs from long ago. Needs for safety, validation, touch, protection. And because they were never fully met in childhood, the adult self searches frantically for someone to finally provide them. But no matter how close that person gets, it never feels like enough. Because the child inside isn't just asking to be loved, it's asking to be rescued. Now contrast that with a love rooted in plenitude. This kind of love doesn't seek to be saved. It seeks to share. It doesn't say, I need you to complete me. It says, I've come home to myself, and I'd love to walk with you. Love from plenitude doesn't mean you don't desire connection. It means you don't need it to survive. You've made peace with your solitude. You've learned how to sit with your pain without trying to hand it off to someone else. You've stopped searching for someone to carry what only you can integrate. And so when someone comes into your life, it's not out of desperation, it's an invitation, a choice, not a compulsion. This kind of love gives room. It respects autonomy. It celebrates your wholeness and doesn't try to absorb or dissolve it. You are two complete beings walking side by side, not two fragments trying to become whole through each other. You can tell which form of love you're in by the way you feel in their absence. Does separation trigger panic, or does it simply create space for longing without collapsing your center? Do you collapse when the other doesn't respond the way you hope, or do you return to yourself, grounded, still open, still whole? Plenitude doesn't mean detachment. You can miss someone deeply. You can feel pain. You can want closeness. But your identity is not held hostage by their behavior. And this is what makes love from plenitude sustainable. It doesn't burn you out. It doesn't become a game of emotional debt and repayment. It isn't fueled by anxiety or chased like oxygen. It is spacious, respectful, expansive. It says, I honor your path even when it doesn't center me. It says, I choose you freely, not because I am empty, but because I am full. Getting here isn't easy. It requires a different kind of work, inner tending. It means recognizing the parts of you that want to cling, that want to be held forever, that panic when alone. And it means meeting those parts, not with shame, but with compassion, because dependency is not a flaw. It's a signal. It shows you where you are still hungry, still grieving, still waiting to be chosen by yourself. The real shift happens when you become the one who chooses you. When you stop outsourcing your emotional safety and start anchoring it inside. When your worth is no longer a negotiation, but a quiet knowing. Then you begin to attract relationships that mirror your integration. Not perfect relationships, but conscious ones. Relationships where love is not a transaction, it's a mutual unfolding. So ask yourself, does this relationship make me smaller, more anxious, more afraid? Or does it deepen my capacity to love myself? Do I lose myself trying to keep it? Or do I find more of myself through it? The answers will show you the ground you're standing on. And once you see clearly, you can choose again. In the next section, we'll take these insights even further, with practical tools to help you discern what's projection, what's pattern, and what's genuine connection. Because awareness is powerful, but action is what makes it lasting. Insight is powerful, but without practice, it fades. If you want to transform the way you relate, not just to others but to yourself, you need tools, anchors, practices that bring the abstract into the tangible, that allow your awareness to become lived truth. Discernment begins with presence. So before you go looking for answers, pause, breathe. Where are you right now? Not just physically, but emotionally, energetically. This is the first tool, embodied awareness. The body often knows before the mind is willing to admit. When you're with this person, or even thinking about them, how does your body respond? Do your shoulders tense? Does your breath shorten? Does your stomach twist or soften? Love that aligns with your truth creates expansion. Love rooted in fear, projection, or unmet need creates contraction. Don't judge the response. Just notice it. Name it. The more you include your body in your discernment, the less likely you are to be swept away by fantasy. The second tool, emotional reflection. Ask yourself honestly, what emotions dominate this connection? Is there a baseline of safety, respect, and ease? Or is there a constant undercurrent of anxiety, insecurity, or longing? Write it out. Let your emotions speak. Often when we write without filters, deeper truths emerge. You might start by asking, what do I believe this person gives me that I cannot give myself? Am I in love with them, or with who I become in their presence? Do I feel freer with them, or more dependent on their attention to feel okay? The third tool, pattern recognition. Look at your relational history. Are you seeing a familiar script play out? Are the faces changing, but the emotional dynamics staying the same? Projection often wears different disguises. One person may come in the form of deep care, another in distance, but if both activate the same pain, rejection, unworthiness, abandonment, then your work is not with them. It's with the part of you still asking to be healed. Break the trance by mapping the pattern. Write down 3 relationships that left a strong imprint on you. What emotional roles did you play in each? What themes repeat? Naming the pattern is not about blame, it's about liberation. Once you see it, you can choose differently. The fourth tool, truth without outcome. Ask yourself, if I knew this relationship wouldn't last, what truth would I still want to live in right now? Sometimes we withhold honesty, our needs, our boundaries, even our love, because we fear the outcome. But discernment requires truth. Even when the future is uncertain, speak to yourself clearly. Speak to the other clearly, not to control the direction of the relationship, but to be in integrity with your own soul. Discernment doesn't always mean leaving, it means seeing clearly. And sometimes, seeing clearly allows a connection to deepen because the illusion has dropped and what's left is real. The fifth tool, sacred solitude. Spend intentional time alone, not as punishment, but as reconnection. When you step away from the noise of longing, expectation, and hope, you can hear your deeper voice again. Ask, what is love asking of me right now? Not what is the other person giving or withholding, but what is this experience calling forth from me? Love is never just about the other, it's about you, how you meet yourself, how you protect your peace, how you trust your own unfolding. These tools are not quick fixes, they are invitations into clarity, self-responsibility, and a love that begins within. In the next and final section, we'll bring everything together. Because discernment is not the end of the journey, it's the beginning of real, conscious love. And from that place, every relationship becomes a mirror, not of your wounds, but of your wholeness. Love, in its truest form, is not something we fall into, It is something we awaken through every person we are drawn to, every relationship that stirs us, every bond that leaves an imprint, whether it lasts or not, is part of this awakening. They are not just companions or heartbreaks. They are mirrors, and what they reflect is never just about them. They show us the hidden places in ourselves, the light we didn't know we carried, the wounds we thought we buried, the truths we've been both craving and avoiding. Sometimes, love cracks us open with tenderness. Sometimes, it shakes us to the core, but always, it reveals. The purpose of love is not to rescue us. It's not to fill the voids we've been taught to fear. The purpose of love is to return us to ourselves, to the parts we forgot, rejected, or gave away in exchange for approval. That's why the most significant relationships in our lives are not always the longest. Some are short, intense, even painful, but they serve a sacred role. They bring us closer to our essence. They challenge the versions of ourselves we've outgrown, and if we're willing, they guide us into greater wholeness. This is the love that liberates. It's not perfect. It doesn't promise certainty, but it does promise truth, if we're brave enough to face it. So wherever you are right now, whether grieving the end of a connection, questioning the one you're in, or learning to love yourself for the first time, know this: you are not behind. You are not broken. You are not unworthy of deep, grounded, conscious love. You are becoming more of who you truly are. And from that place, you will begin to attract relationships that honor your truth, not your trauma, that nourish your soul, not your survival, that walk beside you, not to complete you, but to witness your becoming. That's the mirror worth standing in front of. That's the love worth waiting for, or becoming. If this journey touched something in you, let it continue. Breathe, reflect, stay close to your own unfolding, and remember, the most important relationship you will ever have is the one you build with yourself.